welcome to this talk. My name's Gary Danks. I'm the General Manager of the AIM product at Kochava. And today we're going to do a session on marketing mix modeling, so MMM. We're going to delve into what marketing mix modeling is, what the inputs are that you need to do it, and what the output is that you get. And then towards the end, we're going to have a bit of fun as well. And I'm going to show you a case study involving Taylor Swift. Okay, so yeah, exactly. So for those that don't know who Kochava are, Kochava was founded in 2011, and in a very sort of top level view, we're an MMP. So consider us a competitor to AppsFlyer, Adjust, and so on and so forth. So we have got a very big presence in North America and over 1,000 clients. There's about 200 of us altogether, and we've got offices all throughout the world. To give you a bit of further context on this, my business, Machine Advertising, was acquired by Kochava about 18 months ago or so. And the reason why Kochava acquired my business was for the product that we have called AIM, which is what we call a next generation marketing mix modeling tool. Okay, so we're going to delve into what MMM is. So I'm going to define that for you, both technically and from a sort of more marketing sort of perspective. We're going to look at how you get started, so what the inputs are that you need to get started with MMM, and then what you should expect to get out of an MMM model. So the first thing is, what is MMM? Okay, so I'll just do a quick show of hands here. Who in this room has actually had any experience with MMM at all? There's a few, very few. I'd say probably about 5% or so. So I'm assuming the rest of you don't have any experience with it at all. So what is MMM? So one of the things that we always get asked when we're presenting marketing mix modeling is, what's the difference between marketing mix modeling and last touch attribution? It's a fair question because both methodologies quantify your marketing efforts. So they give feedback on what you're doing as a marketeer. But from a technical point of view, what marketing mix modeling is a statistical analysis method that measures the influence of your marketing efforts and external factors on your business outcomes. Okay, so it sounds very similar to what touch attribution does. It gives you feedback on your marketing investment. But there is nuance to this. So let's look at a technical definition of last touch attribution. So last touch attribution is the practice of assigning full credit, so 100% of the credit, to the last touch point that the consumer interacted with before the conversion happened. Okay, so those two things do sound very similar, and I get that. So let's break it down into a couple of different analogies for you. So every time you go to the cinema to see a new film, there's always a poster for the film that you're about to see next to the door of the screen that you're about to go into. Now, in last touch attribution world, 100% of the credit would go to that movie theatre poster, when in reality, what's actually influenced you to go to the movie theatre and buy a ticket for that film is a marketing mix. And what marketing mix modeling does is it can understand the different influences of each one of those different channels on that sale. So it understands that that's what's actually influenced you to go to the movie theatre and buy a ticket. And it's able to give you the feedback of the influence of each one of those different media sources and media channels on your sales. It's also able to give you feedback on external factors on your sales as well. So external factors could be anything, and they are different for each client that we work with. But typically, most brands are affected by weather. Most brands are affected by seasonality, by school holidays, by national holidays, all of these things. So typically, an obvious example is if there's unseasonably hot weather, ice cream sales go up, in McDonald's. So that's a good example of what an external factor can do. So let's bring this back to our domain of app marketing. Okay, so if I were to get the urge to download the new Nike shopping app, and I'm watching TV at home, and I pull out my phone and search for the new Nike shopping app, my user journey is pretty straightforward. I open up the App Store, I type into the search bar Nike, and I click on the first thing that's the thing that I want. And typically, that would be an advert. 100% of the credit goes to Apple search ads in this scenario. Effectively, they've become the movie theater poster, when in reality, the Nike performance marketing team maybe had a media mix which looked something like this. Their last touch attribution system is attributing those conversions in a distribution which looks something similar to this. This is obviously mocked up data, but this is typical of what we see on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of the credit going to Apple search ads, a lot of the credit going to Google. MMM will give you a different read on the influence. That's what's actually driven the consumer to go to the Apple search ads in this example and download the install. Okay, so it's also able to pick up on offline media as well. So you notice at the top of this graphic here, there's out of home and TV and so on. So what can you do with this information? So it's enriching your feedback you get from the market. And it means that you can start to pull and push levers that maybe you didn't have before and connect some dots that were missing before. So typically what we see is we see clients start to decrease spend on channels where there isn't as much influence, incrementality, you could also call this as well, and increase spend where there's more influence that's being reported by last touch attribution. So the other thing to just quickly clarify is that one of the core pillars of an MMM model is measuring incremental benefits that you get from your different sources. Okay, so it's a form of incremental measurement, but it's more sophisticated than incremental measurement because it also understands things like seasonality, national holidays, sporting events, and so on, and the impacts of those on your business, on your sales. Last analogy, just to help you understand what MMM does. Okay, so if you ask anyone what happened to the Titanic, why did the Titanic crash? Most people, 99% of people, will tell you, well, it hit an iceberg, which is correct. That was literally the last touch point. But there's lots of other influences why it hit the iceberg. It was going too fast, okay? So it was going too fast, that's why it hit the iceberg. It was going too fast because it was trying to break transatlantic speed records. At the time of the Titanic, it was a very competitive market. So they were trying to prove that the Titanic was the quickest way to get to America. It was trying to break the records because the company that owned the Titanic, the leadership team, were putting pressure on the captain, which was relatively inexperienced. He was an experienced captain, but no one was experienced at captaining the world's biggest ship. And they ignored all of the warning signs. They had multiple warning signs around icebergs in the area. And the reason why they ignored those warning signs is because they had overconfidence in the technology. The picture that I'm trying to paint here is that there are multiple reasons for something happening. It isn't just the last touch point. Okay, so in this case, the iceberg gets the credit, infamous as it was. Okay, so how to build a model? What do you need to build a model? What are the inputs that you need to build a MMM model? Okay, so there are 4 core elements to building a model. The first one are your events. So typically for this audience, it's going to be number of installs, first purchases, revenue events, subscription, trial, whatever it may be, whatever it is that's important to you as a marketeer to optimize your KPIs. That's what the model would need to understand. So we would build a model for each one of these different events. We would then need to understand what your media is. So your different media spends on Google, Apple, Facebook, TV, out of home, any CRM that you're doing or promotions, whatever it may be, your own media as well, we can inject that into the model as a signal. Then it's the geolocation, the regional location that you want us to build a model in. So that's typically at country level. And then it's the platform. So iOS, Android, web, connected TV. So if we were going to build a model for you or any service provider, we would be looking to build a model on these different core elements. So if we were going to build a model for you on the US and iOS, your model data inputs would look something like this. And it's what we call market level aggregated data. So it's privacy first data. So there's no issues around iOS, Apple privacy policies. And of course, with Google Sandbox coming up as well, it's future-proof against that as well. So we would need all of your install data for the US on iOS, all of your first-time purchases and so on and so forth. And it would be the same for your media as well. And that's how we build a brand model. In order to do this, the model needs to know about your historical data. Okay, so to build a model, we need at least 1 year's worth of data. If you have 2 or 3 years worth of data, it improves the model. It's a data science product, so the more data it has, the better it performs and the more robust it can be. It's the same with ad spend as well. It says 3+ months, but the more it has, the better it is. How we get this is pretty straightforward. We would connect to various different APIs. Typically, that would be your MMP, your touch attribution supplier, so AppsFlyer, Adjust, Kochava, Singular, and so on. And we would extract that data directly via your advertiser API. We build the model on historical data, and then every day it collects the data with today's results as well, and it updates. So you've always got a model which is real time. So you can look at this data and look at your model in real time to give you real-time feedback on your performance results. This is relatively new for the MMM space. Typically with traditional MMM, you would need a team of data scientists to build your model. They would take about 3 to 6 months to build the model, and then you'd be given a static report that tells you what the output was. It's very insightful, but it's still already 6 months old. And it's not very actionable as well. So really what you want is a system that can give you actionable output. The third element of this is working together with your provider to understand the external events that can go into your model. So these are the events that affect your business. There's some sort of default events that we always put in there, things like weather, national holidays. So if we were building a model for the US, for example, we would go and get all of the national holidays for the US for the last 3 or 4 years and put those into the model so it can understand that these were holiday events that were happening, sporting events, so on and so forth. And then there's other events that you may feel need to go into that model as well. So make your service provider aware of those external events. School holidays quite often have a big impact on a lot of brands as well. The output that you get from a model should be at network level, at publisher level, and at campaign level. And what I mean by that is you should get the feedback from the model on the KPIs that you want to optimize against and the events that you want to optimize at this hierarchy. So let's run through this. So it would be your number of installs, your number of revenue events, your ROAS, whatever it may be, at network level. So that would be Google. At publisher level would be YouTube, search, Google Display, so on and so forth. And then at campaign level, you'd see your dozens or hundreds of campaigns on Google. So it's giving you the type of feedback that you can action in the market. It takes about 4 to 8 weeks to build a model. We have built models in about 2 weeks, depending on sort of data quality. The longest it's taken is about 8 weeks. It means that you have to spend about a day on your side collecting the data in consultation with your service provider so that we can understand things like your goals, your optimization strategies, your external factors that are going to affect the model, and so on. There's no SDK involved, so it means there's no technical resources that are needed to build a model on your side. There's no campaign disruption, so this can run in parallel to whatever you're doing at the moment. And it's privacy-first data only, so it's future-proof against any evolving privacy policies that may or may not happen in the future. So as a model is built, you will start to see the events that we've modeled for you, and the model will start to deeply understand your business. So this is a really basic example. It's a month level, but you could also view this at day level or week level and so on. So here we've modeled sales, registrations, installs. The model will understand the seasonality of your brand by month, by week, by day, the national holidays that affect your business outcomes within that geo-region, your media, and the external factors. So what does this mean? So, for example, if the model detected a 5% increase in registrations on the second Sunday in February and a 3% increase in sales, and it had prior knowledge that that was the day that the Super Bowl was on, it would attribute those sales to the Super Bowl. So it would give you that feedback as if you're looking at an attribution report. So not only would you see your sales by networks, your media partners, your offline media as well, it would also attribute sales to events like the Super Bowl, if that affected your sales. So it means that you now have enriched data to make more strategical decisions going forward. Okay, so what to expect? What's the output of a MMM model? As I've said, what you should really be looking for with any supplier is actionable data. So you should easily be able to log into the system or pull a report from the system where you can see your registrations, your first-time conversions, your CPA, and then, of course, the recommendation as well. So an MMM model is not only going to give you a different read on the attribution of your sales, but it's also going to give you recommendation about how you optimize your sales for maximum efficiency in the market. So depending on the optimization strategy that you have, it will optimize towards that. So it's going to give you incremental KPIs and machine learning optimizations. The outputs that you can get from a MMM system will also include things like cost curves. So these are identifying the point of diminishing returns for you across your different media sources. So the cost curve is going to identify where your ROAS is becoming less efficient, and maybe your first-time deposits, there's room to grow on certain different networks. And it's going to give you confidence bounds on those as well. So it should give you a confidence on the level of its accuracy. It's also going to be able to give you predictive models as well, depending on whatever your optimization strategy is or the KPI that you want a prediction on. So in this example, it's cost per acquisition. It would give you a forecast for the next few days, next few weeks, or next few months. So it's going to give you an accurate read on what you can achieve in the market with your cost per acquisition if you doubled your ad spend, if you halved your ad spend, if you kept your ad spend where it was. So it's going to give you that type of feedback. Okay, so now we're going to sort of slightly change it up and hopefully make it a bit more fun. Okay, so we built a model for a client of ours, a very well-known taxi firm in North America. And the model was very accurate. So we've achieved a 3% error rate with the model. What that means is that the model is able to predict into the future with a 97% accuracy rate. So it can according to the client's criteria, it can tell the client what their revenue is going to be, what their first-time rides are going to be, and so on and so forth over a 2-week period with a 97% accuracy rate. And what that looks like is something like this. Okay, so this is a screenshot from our system. The data's been anonymized. And what the model was picking up on was a unique lift in sales around a certain period of time last year. And those sales there, if you can see right at the bottom, there's a sort of pink reddish line, you can see it on the screen there, was actually Taylor Swift. Okay, so we went back to the client and said, there's something happening on certain days throughout these months within your sales, and they're not organic, and they're not being attributed to Google or Apple or so on. And they said, hey, well, that's strange, because that's roughly in or around when Taylor Swift was touring. So we went online, downloaded the Taylor Swift tour dates and the amount of tickets that she sold at each one of these dates. And we injected that signal into the model, and the model was then able to attribute it to Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift toured about 54 times during a 6-month period across North America. And the model was able to pick up on the 3-point-something%. You're going to see it in a minute here. There you go, Taylor Swift. So 3.1% in first-time conversions for this brand. Okay, so it's not a small amount, it's significant. You know, you can see it up there. So these are actual sales, 3,500 sales, and that was just in June. What that looked like, so when we filter it out, this is with everything on there. So this is their organics and their different media sources and so on and so forth. And then within our system, you can click on Taylor Swift in this example here, and then Taylor Swift looks like that. So during the months of March to August, she toured 54 times, and it had a profound impact on their first-time sales. She toured 54 times across these different states, and the model was able to attribute those sales lift to the Swift impact. It was a 3.1% lift in sales. You can see the sales figures up there, month by month. And the MMP, so we went back, this was a singular client, the MMP attributed these sales to Google and Apple. Okay, so now what the model is able to show the marketeer is that it's not incorrect that Google and Apple were the last touch point, but they weren't the influencing factor on this sales lift. So just to be clear, what the model's doing is it's understanding that typically on a Wednesday in Texas, they get 100 sales. But on this Wednesday, they got 103 sales. So therefore, it's able to attribute that lift to an external event because it had the prior knowledge that Taylor Swift was touring on that Wednesday. So it's understanding the sales baseline, the seasonality, and so on of the client. So obviously that Taylor Swift bump looks a little bit familiar. It looks like an iceberg. Sorry, it's a bit cheesy. But a bit like the Titanic story that I told you earlier, it's not the fact that Apple and Google, it's factually correct. They were the last touch point. People did go there and search for this client's app, but they weren't the influencing factor on these sales. It was Taylor Swift. So just to quickly finish off here. So MMM will take you beyond the final touch point. It gives you a holistic view on your sales outcomes. So it's going to give you a read on, of course, your media sources, online and offline. It's going to give you a read on any promotions that you do, and, of course, external factors. It's going to give you strategic advantages within the market. So if you know, like you can't control when Taylor Swift is coming to town, but if you do know that there's a 3% increase in your sales, it means that you can maybe pull and push some levers that you didn't have before. Maybe you can make some creative changes. Maybe you can decrease your media spend on one platform and increase it on another to improve the lift effect that you get. Just as an FYI as well, because of this, we ended up sort of making rods for our own back. So now every stadium tour that goes in North America, we now model all of those. So Bruce Springsteen, Harry Styles, Elton John, they all toured last year. It was pretty much the same effect across all of them. It's very easy to implement. There's always been a bit of a myth around MMM. This is a bit of a heavy lift for the client and so on and so forth. It isn't. With a good system and a good partner, you simply have to give some access to your data, and that's normally done just through an API. At worst, it's done through an Excel file, and you can just give us the data for the last 3 years. So it's really simple. And then we just have to have a conversation. What's your optimization strategies that you want the model to optimize towards? What are the events and the KPIs that you want us to model? And it's future-proof. So it's future-proof against any privacy policy changes that happen in the future. Of course, there will be more. They're always evolving. And it helps you understand the complexity of your user journey. So it's not just about that final touch point, it's about the whole journey that the user goes on before they interact with your brand.